Words can be like X-rays. If you use them properly, they'll go through anything. You read and you're pierced. After silence, that which comes nearest to expressing the inexpressible is music. To travel is to discover that everyone is wrong about other countries. To be shaken out of the ruts of ordinary perception, to be shown for a few timeless hours the outer and inner world, not as they appear to an animal obsessed with survival or to a human being obsessed with words and notions, but as they are apprehended, directly and unconditionally, by mind at large. This is an experience of inestimable value to everyone. The man who comes back through the door in the wall will never be quite the same as the man who went out. The end cannot justify the means, for the simple and obvious reason that the means employed determine the nature of the ends produced. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you mad. Most ignorance is vincible ignorance. We don't know because we don't want to know. There is only one corner of the universe you can be certain of improving, and that's your own self. That all men are equal is a proposition to which, at ordinary times, no sane individual has ever given his assent. The vast majority of human beings dislike and even dread all notions with which they are not familiar. There is only one thing in this world worse than being talked about, and that is not being talked about. You know quite well, deep within you, that there is only a single magic, a single power, a single salvation. And that is called loving. An intellectual is a person who has discovered something more interesting than sex. There isn't any formula or method. You learn to love by loving, by paying attention and doing what one thereby discovers has to be done. I wanted to change the world. But I have found that the only thing one can be sure of changing is oneself. Happiness is not achieved by the conscious pursuit of happiness, it is generally the byproduct of other activities. We live together, we act on, and react to, one another, but always and in all circumstances we are by ourselves. Consistency is contrary to nature, contrary to life. The only completely consistent people are dead. It's dark because you are trying too hard. Lightly, child, lightly. Learn to do everything lightly. Yes, feel lightly even though you're feeling deeply. Just lightly let things happen and lightly cope with them. The most valuable of all education is the ability to make yourself do the thing you have to do, when it has to be done, whether you like it or not. That which fundamentally is the desire for self-expression and for the fulfillment of his own personal powers is the profoundest fact about man. There is only one time that is important, now. It is the most important time because it is the only time when we have any power. To his dog, every man is Napoleon, hence the constant popularity of dogs. My fate cannot be mastered, it can only be collaborated with and thereby, to some extent, directed. Nor am I the captain of my soul, I am only its noisiest passenger. There is no substitute for talent. Industry and all its virtues are of no avail. What is absurd and monstrous about war is that men who have no personal quarrel should be trained to murder one another in cold blood. That men do not learn very much from the lessons of history is the most important of all the lessons that history has to teach. Actual happiness always looks pretty squalid in comparison with the overcompensations for misery. And, of course, stability isn't nearly so spectacular as instability. And being contented has none of the glamour of a good fight against misfortune, none of the picturesqueness of a struggle with temptation, or a fatal overthrow by passion or doubt. Happiness is never grand. There are things known and there are things unknown, and in between are the doors of perception. Technological progress has merely provided us with more efficient means for going backwards. The propagandist's purpose is to make one set of people forget that certain other sets of people are human. A democracy which makes or even effectively prepares for modern, scientific war must necessarily cease to be democratic. No country can be really well prepared for modern war unless it is governed by a tyrant, at the head of a highly trained and perfectly obedient bureaucracy. Experience teaches only the teachable. Experience is not what happens to a man, it is what a man does with what happens to him. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. There is no such thing as a good war or a bad peace. Great is truth, but still greater, from a practical point of view, is silence about truth. By simply not mentioning certain subjects. Totalitarian propagandists have influenced opinion much more effectively than they could have by the most eloquent denunciations. There's only one effectively redemptive sacrifice, the sacrifice of self-will to make room for the knowledge of God. I wanted to change the world. But I have found that the only thing one can be sure of changing is oneself. We are all geniuses up to the age of 10. The most valuable of all education is the ability to make yourself do the thing you have to do, when it has to be done, whether you like it or not. You know quite well, deep within you, that there is only a single magic, a single power, a single salvation. And that is called loving. There is only one thing in this world worse than being talked about, and that is not being talked about. The vast majority of human beings dislike and even dread all notions with which they are not familiar. It is only by a wise economy of nature that those who suffer without change, and whom no one can help, become uninteresting. Yet so it may happen that those who need sympathy the most often attract it the least. To be an intellectual really means to speak a truth that allows suffering to speak. The more powerful and original a mind, the more it will incline towards the religion of solitude. Chastity, the most unnatural of all the sexual perversions. To see ourselves as others see us is a most salutary gift. Hardly less important is the capacity to see others as they see themselves. I'd rather be myself, he said. Myself and nasty. Not somebody else, however jolly. No woman ever falls in love with a man unless she has a better opinion of him than he deserves. One believes things because one has been conditioned to believe them. Thanks for watching.